3 weeks before I was going to graduate, a gentleman approached me and asked me to buy my business. He said he really liked the concept. And at the time, he offered me $100,000. Obviously, being at that age, I thought I was rich and I couldn't sign fast enough because I thought he was crazy and out of his mind. A little over a year later, I believe it was 13 months, he sold the business for $1.4 million.
This is the Storytelling for Sales podcast, a show about leveraging the power of storytelling to ignite your sales performance and grow your business.
Hello, this is your host Ed Bilat, and thank you for listening to our show. We have a very deep and introspective show for you today with a very cool guest. Joining me is David Sorger, president of Smooth Commerce from Toronto, Canada. David is a serial entrepreneur and a strategic problem solver who has held several C-level and executive level positions across a number of industries. For example, he was a president and CEO at Kingsmill Foods, partnering with organizations such as Tim Hortons, Kraft and Second Cup. David is sharing his experience and his stories with us today. David Sorger, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ed.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. I can't wait to catch up on the stories. We had a great meeting back in April. So thank you so much for coming to the show today. But before we start, let me ask you our traditional question.
Okay.
What business success stories inspires you and why?
Based on the one that pops up, I think, or the one that's most relevant to me based on what I'm doing currently would be Domino's success story. So approximately 7 years...
The pizza place?
The pizza place itself, and I'll explain to you why. Approximately 7 years ago, they were on the verge of bankruptcy, and they made a very bold and inspiring decision. And that decision was to become a technology company first and a pizza company second.
Wow.
And they claimed that they don't have the best pizza. They claim to this day that they don't have the best pizza. But they wanted to make sure that they would appeal to, obviously, the growing and new demographic that wanted the convenience over anything else. And so they shifted completely and became a technology company and made sure that any way you wanted to order Domino's, you could order Domino's. And as of last February, they overtook Pizza Hut to become the number one pizza company in the world. So a company that could go from the verge of bankruptcy to the number one pizza company in the world by doing something that no one would have even thought of doing, which is deviate from what they were known for, making pizza, and pivot to being a digital company that actually built technology, and pizza was only the vehicle to showcase their technology. That story is extremely inspiring to me.
Interesting. And you would think so. Pizza is a pizza, better ingredients, better pizza, right? So
you would think so. In the days where that was the only factor, I would tend to agree with you. But I think this speaks to how business is evolving, how we need to leverage technology or any of the tools that are provided to us in current state and future state to ensure that we capture the audience that we need to make successful, obviously, decisions and impact meaningful change.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing this. Okay, so let's turn the spotlight back at you. So you've been dominating several industries. The food service, retail, CPG, all of it with the technology component and automotive dealers. So how did you even get into the entrepreneurial/sales world?
That's a good question. I think if I really want to go back to how it all started, I was in university doing actually a degree in kinesiology and health science and also studying business at the same time. The first thing I decided to do was to open up an actual company that just went around. I would sell to small, medium-sized, even some corporate businesses, and I'd go and set up their workstations. Before mouse pads had the gel pad to prevent carpal tunnel syndrome, I would go and set up workstations and give them some small exercises to do, some stretches, and the proper way to sit and things of that nature.
I see.
And
so that was at least related to your field of studies, right?
It was, but the life lesson comes in this format. About 3 weeks before I was going to graduate, a gentleman approached me and asked me to buy my business. He said he really liked the concept. And at the time, he offered me $100,000. Obviously, being at that age, I thought I was rich and I couldn't sign fast enough because I thought he was crazy and out of his mind. A little over a year later, I believe it was 13 months, he sold the business for $1.4 million.
Ouch. Ouch.
Now, when I think back about what I could have done differently, given my level of expertise and business acumen at the time, not very much. I mean, if I think back, I think maybe I should have sold 80% for $80,000, but I had dollar signs in my eyes and I was able to get out of my school debt and I was able to have a little bit of a cushion in my savings account. And so that's what inspired me. That was the beginning of me understanding that I really had to not just have great business ideas, but actually have an ecosystem around me, people that I could engage with to ensure that, I could actually have a complete offering and have the knowledge base required to really grow businesses and see where there was additional opportunities. So it really started off the path to what I believe is my entrepreneurial career. And I am a serial entrepreneur. Absolutely. I've started and sold 3 different companies to date, and obviously working on a couple of additional initiatives right now. So it's not for everyone. Everyone thinks entrepreneurialism is easy. Everyone thinks sales is easy, that anyone can do it. But I truly believe that there is an art and a talent to it. And, having to go from making nothing 3 months in a row to having a great month and making $10,000 or 20 or 30 or 40 or whatever a great month means to you, and then going back to making nothing again, it's difficult when you're starting things off, but it allows you to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And as my wife says, this, whatever you do, this entrepreneurship should be spelled with a T at the end.
That's true. That's very true.
So it's not for everybody. So with regards to making the first sale for your new business, is there any particular most common mistakes you have seen that salespeople do, entrepreneurs do?
Yes.
Anything?
They talk instead of listen is, I think, the best advice that I could give anyone. You really want to engage whoever you're selling to lead the conversation initially, would be my advice. You have a very short window to be able to understand exactly what kind of day that individual is having. So, pitching to even the same person at the same company on a Monday versus a Tuesday versus a Wednesday may be completely different and serve different outcomes based on what kind of day that individual is having. Have they just lost the biggest deal of their life? Have they just been yelled at by their manager or by their president or whoever? You really need to understand and really develop that relationship and provide that value and make that individual feel like there's value in dealing with you before you actually start selling your product.
That's a great advice. How do you get them talking?
Just a series of, this is the social element of it. Simple questions. How was your day? Maybe being aware of certain body language and seeing if they've had a difficult day, asking if everything is okay. I've had sales calls in the early stages of my life. Once I realized that the person wasn't having necessarily the best day, I stopped selling my product completely and wanted to really engage them in, how are you doing? What kind of a day are you having? Is everything okay? Is there anything I can do to help you? If you develop that relationship and that connection right away, then when it is time to talk about your product, then the recipient is far more likely to be open to what you have to say and to engaging with you on a business level with whatever you're selling at any given time.
Yeah, I absolutely love this advice. So as Confucius said many years ago, you have to give first before you want to get something, right?
I couldn't agree with you more. So I think everything is about, even when you can't help someone, this advice was given to me actually by one of my sales mentors. And if you are offered with an opportunity that you either don't have time for or that is not necessarily in your wheelhouse of what you are or are not capable of doing, then you should always recommend a solution to that individual. Introduce them to someone else. Tell them that you're not the right person for this, but you have someone that is the right person for this. Because in my opinion, what it automatically does is it develops huge amount of trust. And you then know that when they call you up and you have the ability to engage, then price never becomes a factor. They will always trust you because you had the wherewithal to understand that you couldn't best serve them with something. And so you allowed them or introduce them to someone else who could, which takes a lot for anyone to do, to ensure that, to give up revenue, to give up business, and to say that there's someone better suited out there for what that particular need is at any given time.
No, very interesting. Very good advice. I'm sure that came from an experience. Like, do you have like a favorite sales failure or sales situation which was a complete disaster, but in the end gave you all that great experience you're sharing with us today?
Yeah, well, I can speak to that exact last point. There was early in my career, there was a philosophy that I had, which was always say yes. If you can't do it, find the people who can do it. And unfortunately, if you take on that philosophy, then it can cause you more problems than it's worth, because then you're accountable. You become accountable for the situation. It's not about you recommending someone and them assuming a full accountability. You become accountable. So you're managing projects and you're managing situations that you don't necessarily have the expertise to manage, and it ends up getting you in a lot of trouble. You end up missing deadlines. You end up providing a product that isn't ideal or isn't what was agreed upon, and that just ruins your reputation. So you're much better off to just understand what you're best at and surround yourself with that ecosystem, like I said, of people that are really good at the things that you're not good at. And so then you have either the capability of creating a solution together and knowing who drives that solution, depending on which part of the business is being discussed at any given time, or which part of the project is being discussed at any given time. But yeah, no, it's definitely trying to just accept any offer that comes in was the catalyst to me understanding that it goes much further beyond that.
So would you rather say no more often?
I think it's less than saying no. It's more of, this isn't what I do best, and I only would ever recommend what I do best, but I have some people in mind that I'm going to call on your behalf because you can trust me, and I'm going to recommend someone to you that can help you with this particular situation. Because what that results in is an individual having a conversation saying, you need to call David, or you need to call Ed, because they're going to be completely transparent and upfront with you. They'll let you know if they're the best person for the job, and if not, they're going to help you find the best person for the job. You will become a confidant to that individual, and they will always give you the business without even questioning pricing of the things that are in your area of expertise, and will always leverage your network to be able to help them with anything that is outside of your expertise.
Very cool. I love that advice. So thank you for sharing this. So in terms of the industries you have picked, so the food service, retail, CPG, and automotive vertical, all of it with the technology component, what was the rationale for picking those? How did you get to these industries specifically?
You know what? I mean, I wish I could give you some, if I'm being honest, some really thoughtful, intelligent answer. But again, I had a mentor early on in my life that once told me that everyone has a product or a service that they need to sell to an end user. The same business principles apply. And so if you take a step back and really think about that, because when I was asked to go into food service by actually the president of Kingsmill Foods at the time, I said to them, I know nothing about food service. And they said, you know what, David, we've seen at the time I was building an infrastructure. Again, on my previous industry, I was at the Granite Club building the personal training and fitness consulting section of the actual club. And I was building that out. And we went from, in the period of 1 year, we went from, 3 trainers to 35 trainers. And
wow, that's a growth.
she watched that happen. And the reason she gave me that advice is because she said, all I want you to do for my business is the exact same thing that you have done for the Granite Club. And I didn't really understand it at first. But then when she did say that everyone has a product or service that needs to be sold to an end user, it made me realize that, why not give it a shot? A lot of the fundamentals about selling are the same. It's really a widget that you're replacing. Of course, you have to be brought up to speed and understand the points of difference that you're offering versus your competitors. But that applies to every industry. So every single time I came up against, I have to educate myself on X, Y, or Z, I automatically correlated it back to something that I had done before. And I was fortunate enough to, grow the company considerably. And I became president and CEO of Kingsmill Foods after my first 2 years of being there, because it took a 60-year-old company that was relatively flat in growth and showed them a tremendous acceleration in growth. Yeah, well, it's for every success story, there are war wounds that are associated to them.
So in all these verticals, what type of stories excite your customers and partners? What have you seen? What drives the excitement?
Personalization. So you always need to be relatable. So the one thing that I would recommend for anyone is, I'm sure everyone's been in these sales pitches that, people talk about, and this especially applies to me now in technology. If I go into a room full of, CEOs, non-tech people, and I don't even consider myself a technology person, to be quite honest with you. So if I go into and I start talking about, different programs and different technology stacks and this and that, and it's not something that they can relate to or understand, typically you'll see a lot of head nodding, and then you'll walk out of the meeting, think you did a great job. No one had any questions that they wanted to ask you. Everyone was, looking at you and was smiling, and you'll never get another phone call. The reason for that is because no one ever understood what you were pitching to begin with. So you have to personalize your content based on your audience. If you are in an audience full of tech people, then absolutely bring your chief technology officer with you or anyone else, and allow them to have a conversation at a technical level. If you're not, then you really have to sell the 50,000 foot level idea and concept in layman terms to be able to make them understand exactly what they're actually either buying or what they're subscribing to or what they're committing to engaging with you on. That's imperative. So I think that personalization, knowing your audience, personalizing it to the audience is extremely important.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the notes after our meeting in Toronto, and I asked you a question about the future trends. And there's 2 notes I have here. The first one, everybody wants a full customization. And the second one is nobody wants to cook anymore.
Well, that's for my business today. So absolutely. Yes. So today I'm president of a company called Smooth Commerce. We have a very unique customer engagement platform that you can actually surface both either via mobile or web. The mobile or the building app component that we do, building native mobile apps, is probably the one that we're seeing the most traction with. Thank you very much, Starbucks. Thank you very much, Domino's Pizza, for that. But even if you take a look at the simple things like how they're building condos in downtown Toronto now, there are no kitchens in your condos anymore. You have
no kitchen at all.
You have a wall. Yeah. It is literally a wall. And in that wall, it is not set up to prep food or anything. So there's obviously, everyone wants convenience. Everyone is busy. Time is the most valued commodity right now over anything else. So people are willing to pay premiums as long as they're getting the service and the convenience. And really the quality, unfortunately, while it can be a differentiator, is, in my opinion, moved down a little bit, and convenience has taken over. I mean, we go back to what I told you inspires me about the whole Domino's pizza story. I don't think Domino's is the best pizza personally. There's a lot of great pizza places out there that I believe have much better pizza, but they are by far the most convenient. So, and they make it easy for you, and they're constantly reminding you, whether it's via Facebook, whether they're telling you they're going to deliver with drones, whether they're telling you to order through your Google Home. They're always on top of the latest cutting edge technology to make sure that they're satisfying anyone at any demographic, right? So whether it's your traditional person that wants to phone in and that doesn't have technology, or whether it's the newest person that's coming through it that wants to order through Google Home, they give you the option to do whatever you want.
Well, that's interesting. And that brings me to my next question. Like, what challenges do you see facing today's sales leaders? Would you say that technology and convenience becoming more important than the actual product itself or service?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And I think that unfortunately, and where I think technology with all its benefits has a lot of downsides too. It actually can detract from that personalization, from that relationship building. And a lot of the times in a very competitive world, in any industry, everyone's selling roughly the same product for roughly the same price. And really the biggest point of difference ends up being the relationship that you can generate with whoever you're trying to sell to. And technology in some cases has taken a little bit of that away, that, the ability to really personalize, no one wants to talk on the phone anymore. Everyone wants to communicate via email. No one wants to meet in person anymore. Everyone wants to communicate via webinars and things of that nature. The idea of people listening to podcasts a decade ago would have been laughable. Now it becomes one of the major, or definitely one of the ways that at least the younger generation engages with any kind of interest that they have, right? So it's that it really is, technology is a little bit of the issue, the challenge. Then the other challenge is just, quite honestly, time. Everyone is in a rush. Corporations are reducing headcount, and the expectations of what people are to do or to accomplish in a day or what they're accountable for is increasing because of all these efficiencies, because of all the competition out there. So I think the combination of those two is probably the biggest challenge that we're going to face moving forward.
Thank you for sharing this. I mean, for our podcast listeners specifically, the storytelling is a key theme here, right? So we'd like to see how you can use storytelling to keep that human component, which allows you to open up and tell the relevant stories, and at the same time create the empathy and hear the client's needs, right? So like, how do you keep that human connection open,
right,
and use the technology? So like, what is it, like a digital storytelling? Like, is that the new wave if the technology component is so important? So, you've been in so many different verticals and been so successful. Like, what does the art of storytelling mean to you?
It's exactly what you said, actually, Ed. It's bringing the human element to it. So, I do quite a bit of public speaking. I'm keynote speakers at a lot of events, and when I first started doing it, it was exactly what you would think. You would go up there and you would present based on the topic that you were given. And I noticed that when I always loved being in the spotlight. My wife jokes around. She says I was born with a siren on my head and a microphone in my hand. But I realized, and it really was disturbing to me that, I'd see people in the audience glazed over, not interested, talking to each other. And I really took that personally. And it wasn't until I started sharing personal stories, things that actually happened to me that would somehow relate to the topic that I was actually presenting, that I really saw a significant increase in engagement with what I was doing. People want to know about you. If you're the person standing up there on the stage, they don't want to hear. Of course, it's important to talk about industry statistics or where certain things are heading, but you always have to tie it back to a personal experience. If you can get out of the traditional way of talking to an actual product or an actual situation that you're trying to address or anything else that you've been asked to talk about, and you can constantly break off and draw a parallel to something that's happened in your own life to support what you're trying to say in the presentation, and you do it relatively frequently, you'll keep that audience engaged. And I think that's really impactful. You get to talk about some crazy things that might have happened to you at the same time as talking about the topic that you were asked to speak about, and tie the two together. It engages people a lot more. It promotes additional questions after you're done your presentation. People come up to you, they feel more connected to you, they feel more engaged with you. So it really is about, I think, drawing it back to your own personal experiences, because you never want the person in the audience saying, oh, what does that guy know about what he or she is talking about, right? They're just reading from a script or reading from a PowerPoint. So I think bringing in real life events that have either happened to you or friends or anything you can draw from your personal life, that's really the key to storytelling. When you look at even comedians today, your favorite comedians always talk about things that have happened in their own lives. That's how they begin the script. So why wouldn't we as salespeople do the same?
Yeah, that's a great approach, right? And that's what makes you believable. That's what creates empathy, right? Because in the end, people want to see people, not just another blah, blah, blah. Like how many sales presentations you've been through, you just sit there for 5 minutes and thinking, like, why do I have to listen to this for another hour?
No, I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, like who is this clown? Like, have you ever sold anything in your life? You just read a couple of books and came to preach, right?
Exactly. So it's very obvious to me when you can tell someone is just regurgitating information that they've read versus someone who's telling a personal story, like you said, that has a much deeper meaning and connection, and then relating it to whatever the topic is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful advice. So it's been a wonderful interview. So thank you so much, David. What would be the best way for our listeners to connect with you and learn about the company, learn about the technology component you're driving so hard in so many verticals?
Yeah, so we probably the best way would be to go to our website, which is www.smooth.tech, or email me directly with any questions. My last name Sorger@smooth.tech. That would be the best way to connect. I encourage people. We're just actually redoing all the marketing and everything on our website. So for those who want to quickly go on the website now and then come visit us, hopefully a month from now, you'll see a significant change in how we're positioning our product and what we can do to serve the industry and the verticals that we're trying to address.
Excellent. Thank you. We will make sure to include all the links. I'll include your LinkedIn profile as well. And it's been absolutely wonderful experience, particularly from your practical experience, because you've lived through this, and that's what makes it very valuable.
I have lived through it, and those who are people will be unbelievable salespeople if that's really the direction that they want to go to. So much of this is still the human element, like what you said. So much of the opportunity is bringing that human element back, especially in this digital world. If you can be creative, even in a digital way, to bring that human element back, then I think that's the key to a lot of future salespeople's success.
Absolutely. So I agree to that point 100%. Thank you so much again for coming to the show, David.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
That does it for this episode of Storytelling for Sales. You'll find show notes and links on our webpage, storytellingsales.com. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.